Hey dudes! A longtime viewer suggested I do a video talking about the color hate cards in Ice Age, and I thought that was a fantastic idea. So, thank you very much for the suggestion, and let's look at one of the more interesting aspects of Ice Age. Ice Age probably has more color hate than any other set, but I didn't look through every set, so maybe I'm wrong about that. Alpha also has a lot, but Ice Age does have more. So today we're going to look through all the color hate cards and cycles and talk about them and what inspired them. Spoiler, Alpha cards inspired them. I'm also going to mention a few cards that aren't technically color hate in the traditional sense, but they kind of function similarly, so let's get into it. Starting in Wooburg order, white is the first color to talk about. And while every color does have access to color hate, if I were to assign it as like a primary in a color for the color pie, it would probably be white, at least back in the day. For example, like Alpha, white has two full cycles of color hate cards, just in white. And we'll start with the Circle of Protection cards. These are 5 cards originally printed in Alpha, and each of them, well, okay, 4 in Alpha, because Circle of Protection Black didn't make it till Beta, but whatever. Each of them costs 1 in a white, they have an activation cost, and you can pay 1 mana to prevent a single source of that color damage. In Ice Age, these are just reprints, and these cards showed up in Alpha, and so many core sets after Alpha, and they showed up for a lot in the early days. Like most color hate, these cards range from being dead cards to locking your opponent out of the game for 2 mana and holding up a little mana during their turns. It's a great game experience. But the Circle of Protections aren't really that interesting compared to the rest of these, so let's just move on to some of the cards Ice Age introduced that were inspired by Alpha instead of just being reprinted. The Scarab cycle is inspired by the Ward cycle from Alpha. The Ward cycle just gave a creature protection from the color. White Ward is really funny in this regard. The Scarabs instead give the creature +2/+2 if your opponent controls any cards of that color, and the creature can't be blocked by creatures of that color. These are pretty much exactly as niche as the Ward cycle, and roughly around the same power level. The Scarabs won't protect your creature from a removal spell, but the +2/+2 is really nice on an enchantment that only costs you 1 mana. They're interesting, they're not bad cards, and I do kind of like the approach that they took here. Beyond white having 2 whole cycles that hate every color, it also has a hate card for each of its enemy colors, in this case, red and black. Drought is a card that makes you sacrifice a swamp for every black pip in the mana cost, or when you activate an ability, every black pip in the activated ability. So, with a Drought in play, if you cast a Sinkhole, it would read black, black, sorcery, sacrifice 2 swamps, destroy target land. Exciting and fun stuff. But don't worry, you do have to pay 2 white mana every upkeep, so it's pretty balanced. The red hate card is called Justice, and it also costs 2 and 2 white mana, with an upkeep cost of 2 white mana, and each time a red creature or a red spell deals damage, this enchantment deals that much damage back to the controller. This seems less oppressive than Drought, but it's still pretty hard to get around if you're monocolor. I mean, maybe you'll draw that Juggernaut. These cards are pretty similar to what Alpha had. Alpha had Karma for black and Conversion for red. I would say both of these designs seem to be maybe a little bit inspired by both of them, but the design elements of Conversion are a little bit more obvious. Those are not all of the white color hate cards. Alpha had White Knight, which, in my opinion, is color hate, and Ice Age has Order of the White Shield, and, more hilariously, Order of the Sacred Torch, which seems inspired by Northern Paladin. Interestingly, the Sacred Torch is worded strangely, but this card is tap and pay 1 to counter a black spell, which is funny. But unfortunately, that's it. White only has 14 color hate spells in Ice Age. Unless you consider Prismatic Ward to be color hate, which it is, in my opinion, but you get to pick which color to hate when you cast it, meaning it's never dead. This is just the kind of buff that color hate needed. White does have the most color hate, but all of them have at least 1 hate card per enemy color. Blue has Breath of Dreams, which gives each green creature cumulative upkeep 1. But it does have cumulative upkeep, so what a fun card. Blue also has Wrath of Merit Lage, a spell that taps all red creatures when it comes into play and prevents red creatures from untapping. Really fun stuff. There's also Hydroblast, a remake of Blue Elemental Blast, but there is a slight difference in the functionality of these cards. Hydroblast can target a non-red card. It just won't do anything. This has positive traits, like helping your storm count if you're in that bad of a situation, but it also has negative traits, like being able to be deflecting swatted into a land or something. But I do really like Hydroblast. I think it's a fun card, and I do really appreciate that it is slightly different from Blue Elemental Blast. Really, though, the fun blue hate card to talk about is fucking Reality Twist. This card is fucking wild, and it's kind of interesting because it color hates everything except itself. So, like, is it really color hate? I mean, it is, but I don't know. It's a little bit different. I could see people, like, not categorizing this as color hate, but I think the card is hilarious, and we definitely couldn't make this video without talking about it. Actually, Black has a similar card called Infernal Darkness in Ice Age. This card just makes it so all mana sources make black mana. Obviously, the effects on these cards are different, but the result is kind of the same. I don't know. I'm not sure I would define this one as color hate, but I thought I should mention it, especially if I'm talking about Reality Twist. Anyway, Black has Leshrak's Sigil, a card inspired by Death Grip, but instead of countering a green spell, it rips a card from their hand when they cast a green spell, and you can send it back to hand if they manage to find a removal spell. Hilarious and fun gameplay. Really, yeah, this one's actually not so bad. Like, I mean, it's rough at certain points, but you'll be fine. Then for its enemy color white, Black also has the card Stench of Evil, a card that blows up all planes and deals 1 damage to that player per land destroyed. This kind of feels like Karma with, a little splash of Armageddon. But don't worry, the player can pay 2 per damage that they want to prevent this way. So, it's fine and balanced. Much like White Knight and Order of the White Shield, there's also Knight of Stromgald, the Black Knight reference, and Stromgald Cabal, the pair card to Order of the Sacred Torch. This one has the same effect, tapping and paying 1 life to counter a spell. The color is white this time instead of black, obviously. And interestingly, Order of the Sacred Torch says destroy, while Stromgald Cabal says counter. But it's the same effect and they were printed in the same set. This is just kind of weird. Anyway, let's move on to Red. Red has access to Anarchy, a spell that just blows up all white permanents. Fucking hell yeah, dude. And this is really important because now you have a way of playing around a circle of protection. And then moving on to its other enemy, Blue, it has Curse of Merit Lage. Similar to Wrath of Merit Lage, this one instead taps all islands and prevents their untap. Truly hilarious. And of course, like Hydroblast, Pyroblast is also in the set. But we talked about that, so we'll head to green. Freyalisi's Charm is inspired by Life Force and pairs with Leshrak's Sigil, but instead of ripping a card, you draw a card. This one is at least something you can, play over, and while I think these cards aren't super well designed, I do appreciate from, a flavor aspect that the kind of opposite access they approach the same situation, if that makes sense. I don't know, I think it's pretty neat, but they aren't really playable cards. Green's other enemy color is blue, and you can mess up a blue mage using Thought Leech, a 2-mana enchantment that gains you 1 life whenever an island is tapped. Wow. How will they ever recover from this? Interestingly enough, this is actually just a retread. This is the exact opposite of Life Tap, the blue to green color hate card from Alpha. So it's fun to make fun of, but really it's kind of Alpha's fault. Interestingly, green also has 2 land-walking creatures for its enemy colors, with Pale Bears having Island Walk and Pygmy Allosaurus having Swamp Walk. These are pretty harmless and actually cool designs, in my opinion. And cards like them were actually pretty good a little bit later on. Not these ones as much, but they're fine. But yeah, that's all the colors. So you would think that we are done with the color hate cards since, we're done with the colors. But we also have some multicolor hate cards. Yeah. There is loosely defined, I suppose, cycle of the 5 ally color pairs, and each of them target their shared enemy color. For example, glaciers cost 2 and a white and a blue. It has an upkeep cost of white and blue, and all mountains become plains. This is literally just conversion, except it's also blue now. But glaciers do flat land, so it is kind of like flavorful in its own way, I guess. Anyway, blue and white share red as the enemy color, and that's why that's what they're targeting. So that's the pattern of these cards. Monsoon is 2 and a red and a green, and whenever an island is untapped at the end of its controller's turn, it becomes tapped, and Monsoon deals 1 damage to its controller. That makes it pretty hard to hold up counter magic, which is pretty funny, and I do kind of appreciate this color hate design for that. It also kind of feels a little inspired by Power Surge from Alpha. It's certainly not identical, but it's pretty similar. Reclamation is 2 and a white and a green, and makes it so black creatures cannot attack unless a land is sacrificed for each creature. Yeah, you fuck nerd. Flooded Woodlands is 2 and a blue and a black, and green creatures cannot attack unless they sack a land. Yeah, fuck you too, Green Mage. You fucking asshole. Get fucked. Alright, so all 4 of those cards have effects that are kind of similar, and they have, kind of this a very similar mana cost. But the black and red color hate card is kind of a stretch. So the closest I could find to justify this being a whole cycle is Ghostly Flame, which looks a bit strange, but let me explain. This enchantment only costs a red and a black, and it turns red and black damage into colorless damage. This might not seem like color hate, and on its surface it isn't, but the major use case for this card would be to stop your opponent's circle of protections, and white is the enemy of both red and black. So, I don't know, I think it counts. This is a color hate, like fuck white. That's what this card is trying to do. And really, I don't even know of a card other than like the Circle of Protections at this point in the game that this affects. There's probably something, I'm just not thinking of it because it's either really niche or bad. Interestingly, though, there's also one last card we could talk about. Colorless also has Naked Singularity, which is super fucking funny. And this is sort of color hate, right? Like, I mean, it fucks every color equally, but this is kind of color hate, right? Very, very funny stuff. But yeah, we have talked about 37 cards from Ice Age today. But I would say that the number of cards that are actually color hate is probably closer to 33. Somewhere between those numbers is what you would count as the color hate, but probably 33. This set has 383 cards in it, so that's roughly 8% of this set being color hate. That seems like a pretty high percentage to me. Alpha has like 23 color hate cards out of 302, which is around 7%. I guess that is a pretty similar range. It's less extreme than I kind of thought it would be, but I do think Ice Age has the most color hate out of any sets. It's kind of an obscene amount. But yeah, I don't know. Color hate is interesting because it's pretty tricky to do correctly, in my opinion. Like, a lot of these cards can very easily lock out a game, which I do not think is ideal, but when done right, I think they are a very interesting aspect of the game. Anyway, I guess that's all I have for you today. Hopefully you found this as interesting as I did. I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Otherwise, like always, you can like the video if you liked it. You can subscribe if you give a shit. But either way, I hope you have a magical day. Thank you for watching.